Hey guys, welcome back to the Readers. I hope you are having an amazing day. Let's get right into the stories. The first one is pro-revenge story. So starting off by saying, this happened to a friend of mine. They told me the story and I suggested they submit it to our entitled parents, but they didn't want to write it all up and make an account. I offered to paraphrase and write it up since it's a pretty great one, and they said sure. EM is entitled Mom, and Alex is my friend. Alex used to do part-time volunteer work for a local park. It was pretty basic stuff like picking up trash and light security, which was just making sure that people aren't damaging the park property or to report anything shady going on. This park was fairly big and had a jungle gym in the back of it behind a wall of trees. One day in March 2025, Alex noticed there were tire marks in the grass right where a turn out of the back is. It's fairly easy to make that turn and doesn't come out of nowhere or anything, so they didn't know why someone would go through the grass. Also, keep in mind it was very muddy from the spring rain, so the tire marks were pretty much cemented in after the grass was run over. Alex called their supervisor, Jake, and he said that they would fix that area when it gets a little warmer out, which it was going to be later that week. A couple days later, when Alex was near the front of the park patrolling, they noticed a silver minivan coming up from the back of the park. It went right through the same area of the grass that was previously run over. Alex couldn't believe they just witnessed it happen. The turn doesn't come out of nowhere, and you can clearly see that going straight out will take you through the grass. Alex started jogging towards the van, waving their arms to get the driver's attention. She stopped and rolled down her window, wearing thick designer sunglasses, and looked at Alex confused at first. She also had two kids in the back staring at tablets. EM. What? Alex. Excuse me, miss. I'm one of the park workers. You drove straight through the grass back there. With how muddy it is right there, the grass gets damaged very easily. EM. Okay? She clearly didn't care and shocked Alex a bit that she didn't apologize about it. Alex. Well, the grass is going to need to be replaced. I understand if it was a mistake, but please be more careful when coming out from the back. EM. Do I look like I care about some stupid grass? Alex could tell she was giving them a dirty look, even with her giant sunglasses covering most of her face. Alex. Ma'am, we work hard to keep this park looking nice for everyone to enjoy. EM. Whatever. She said rudely and drove out towards the entrance after Alex backed away from the van. Fast forward a couple days, Alex and Jake had finished flattening the dirt and putting down new seed for that area in the morning. Alex was pretty happy with how it turned out, and the grass would look better than it did before once it grew. Later that day, when Alex came back to patrol the park, they noticed the same silver minivan in the back parking lot. Alex headed over to the jungle gym area and of course saw the entitled mom on a bench looking at her phone while her kids were playing. Alex was hoping in the back of their mind that she would have listened yesterday, but judging from how she acted, they were doubtful. Alex did a couple walks around the back area, making sure there wasn't any trash. When they saw her tell the kids it was time to go, Alex sprinted towards the front of the park entrance. They stood in front of a car at the front and put their own pair of sunglasses on. Alex kept them in a fanny pack along with some medical supplies and their phone, so that she wouldn't recognize them and stay on the path, like how you slow down on the road when passing a police officer. Once her van started coming up, Alex was watching in disbelief as once again she didn't turn and went right through the same area again that they had just fixed up that morning. Alex was furious now. They walked up to her van, this time being in the middle of the pavement, and she stopped when Alex approached, rolling down her window and giving Alex a pissed look that they stopped her again. EM. Oh my God, what do you want? Alex. Miss, you ran over that area again. We had finished fixing it this morning and you just ran it over. EM. So? It's just some ducking grass. You should just make that whole area pavement so it won't get run over. Alex. You can clearly see that the grass is in front of you when you drive up from the back area. It doesn't come out of nowhere and we've never had anyone run over that area. Only you. Alex had a frustrated tone in their voice, but was still trying to be polite. Her kids in the back were glued to their tablets and weren't paying any mind to Alex other than when they heard their mom swear. They looked to be around 6, 8 years old. EM. Do you have nothing better to do than harass park visitors? I pay taxes that fund this place, you know. She gave Alex one more nasty look before rolling up her window and driving away. She didn't even wait for Alex to back away from her van before driving off, almost running over their foot. That was Alex's tipping point. They called Jake again and told him what happened. Alex could tell he was pretty pissed over the phone, but said that he had a plan to stop that area from getting run over anymore. Alex met him on Friday morning and he had this giant boulder in the back of his pickup truck. Alex instantly knew what they were going to be doing with it. After some work getting it down, digging up the dirt, and wedging it into place, they finished putting the boulder in. Alex had to admit that it made them sad that there was now this eyesore of a rock there and all their work previously was for nothing, but they were happy the entitled mom wouldn't be running over that area anymore. "Think this will solve our problem?" Jake asked, wiping sweat from his brow. "It should, unless she's completely blind," Alex replied. "That boulder's practically the size of a small car." Later that day, Alex was in the back picking up trash when they saw the same minivan pull into the parking lot. Alex knew it was the entitled mom and her kids because they remembered their license plate this time. Alex paid no mind to them, knowing that she couldn't run over the grass again when they left now. Later on, Alex was cleaning some bird poop off a statue when they heard a loud crash sound that came from the front. Alex ran over to where it came from, shocked as they saw the entitled mother's van with the giant boulder they put down wedged between her tire and the bumper of her car. She got out of the van in shock at what happened, swearing and shouting. Alex personally didn't want to damage her car, just realized she couldn't drive through the grass anymore, so they did feel some guilt at seeing the giant boulder wedged in her car. Alex came over to the other side to see that the wheel was off the ground slightly, and the front bumper wedged atop the boulder. Alex didn't know how she even managed that honestly. She saw Alex and immediately got a look of pure, concentrated anger. You! She started walking up to Alex, stomping her feet. "You put that rock there, didn't you, a-hole?" Alex: "Miss, my supervisor brought that boulder in this morning for that spot because you were running over the grass. I don't know how you even hit it since, again, you can clearly see it coming from the back." I was texting my friend, "You a-hole, you're going to pay for this damage." Alex: "You were texting while driving with your kids in the car?" Don't you dare lecture me about my parenting. Alex: "Yeah, I don't think I'll be paying for your damage." She fumed and headed back to her car. She had her 2 kids get out and go sit at a nearby table, both still playing on their tablets. Though, got back in the car and was on the phone. A few minutes later, she told Alex she called the police and that they were going to be arrested for intentionally damaging her property. Alex admitted they were a bit worried that the story she gave them probably wasn't the truth, so they called Jake again. He got there even before the police did. Alex saw him laughing as he pulled up and saw the situation. He walked up to the entitled mom and explained who he was, and she started yelling at him about how she was going to sue and have him and Alex arrested for the damage. A few minutes later, the police pulled up. She told them that they intentionally put that rock there to damage her car, but Alex and Jake explained to the officers that she had driven over that grass several times, even after they had fixed it, and they put that boulder down to keep her and others from driving through the grass. "Officers, we have documentation of when we repaired the area and when we installed the boulder," Jake said, showing them pictures on his phone. "This is park property, and we have every right to protect it." The police got some more information from them and told the entitled mom that they were in the right to put the boulder down and aren't liable for her poor driving. "You can't be serious," the woman shrieked. "They deliberately set a trap for me." "Ma'am," one officer said, clearly tired of her attitude, "the boulder is clearly visible, and by your own admission, you weren't paying attention to the road because you were texting." Frustrated, told her kids to get back in the car and actually started to back out off the boulder. Alex, Jake, the officers, and Alex all watched as the boulder scraped up the bottom of her car as she backed out. Once off it, her front bumper slammed on the pavement and was now hanging down off the left side. Something under her car was also touching the pavement, which was apparent as she started to drive away, and the sound of something scraping against the road could be heard. The officers stopped her and told her that her car was now not safe to drive on the road and she needed to get it towed. "This is ridiculous!" she yelled. "I can't afford a tow truck!" "Maybe next time you'll pay attention to where you're driving," Jake muttered under his breath. Alex and Jake went home shortly after, smiling and laughing at what had happened that day. The next week, they planted some flowers around the boulder to make it look more intentional and less like an eyesore. Alex can safely assume now she won't be going over that grass anymore. "Some people just have to learn the hard way," Jake said as they finished planting the flowers. "Yep," Alex replied, "but at least our grass is safe now." The next one is an entitled people story. I've been a police officer for about 15 years now, and I thought I'd seen every type of entitled person imaginable. Turns out I was wrong. Let me tell you about the time an HOA board member tried to boss me around on my own property, and how spectacularly that backfired on her. A few years back, I bought a nice piece of land just outside the city limits. It was about 2 acres of beautiful wooded property that backed up against a newer subdivision called Pleasant Valley Estates. The subdivision had one of those homeowners associations with all the typical rules about grass height, fence colors, and approved mailbox styles. My property, however, was completely separate from their little kingdom. I had my own deed, my own access road, and absolutely zero obligation to follow their rules. I loved that land. After long shifts dealing with the worst humanity had to offer, I could come home and work on my projects in peace. I had a small workshop, a vegetable garden, and I was slowly building a cabin with my own hands. Nothing fancy, just a simple retreat where I could decompress. The trouble started about 6 months after I moved in. I was out back splitting firewood one Saturday morning when this woman comes marching through the trees from the subdivision. She was probably in her 50s, wearing pristine white sneakers and clutching a clipboard like it was a weapon. Her face had that pinched look that screamed, "I demand to speak to the manager." She introduced herself as the president of the Pleasant Valley HOA board and immediately started rattling off complaints. Apparently, my workshop was an unauthorized structure, my vegetable garden was unsightly, and my burn pile for brush clearing was a fire hazard and eyesore. She informed me that I had 30 days to bring everything into compliance with HOA standards or face fines. I politely explained that my property wasn't part of her HOA. I showed her the survey markers and explained that the subdivision boundary ended about 50 feet into the woods, well short of my land. She wasn't having it. According to her, the community standards applied to anyone in the general area, and I was bringing down property values. When I continued to refuse, she got nastier. She started showing up every few days, sometimes bringing other board members, always with new demands. They wanted me to paint my workshop beige instead of forest green. They wanted me to remove my vegetable garden because it wasn't aesthetically pleasing. They even demanded I stop using my own driveway during certain hours because the sound of my truck disturbed their morning yoga sessions. The breaking point came when she showed up while I was installing a new fence around my garden to keep the deer out. She was absolutely livid about the fence, claiming it violated their approved materials list. When I ignored her and kept working, she pulled out her phone and made a big show of calling the police. "I'm reporting an uncooperative resident who's violating multiple HOA regulations and refusing to comply with lawful orders," she announced loudly, clearly hoping to intimidate me. "Yes, I need an officer out here immediately to deal with this situation. I just kept installing fence posts and let her finish her little performance. What she didn't know was that I knew exactly which officer would be responding to her call. It was my partner Rodriguez, and he'd probably be very amused by this whole situation." Sure enough, Rodriguez showed up about 20 minutes later. He took one look at me in my work clothes, grinned, and played along beautifully. He listened to her whole spiel about HOA violations and uncooperative residents, nodding seriously and taking notes. Then he asked to see the HOA documentation proving my property was subject to their rules. Of course, she couldn't produce any such documentation because it didn't exist. Rodriguez very professionally explained that police couldn't enforce private HOA rules anyway, and that if this was a civil matter, she'd need to take it up through proper legal channels. He suggested she might want to double-check her property boundaries before making any more complaints. She was furious, but had to back down. After Rodriguez left, she stood there fuming for a minute before storming back toward the subdivision, muttering about lawyers and code enforcement. That's when I decided it was time for some malicious compliance. See, the thing about being a cop is that you learn a lot about municipal codes, zoning laws, and ordinances. You also develop a pretty good eye for violations that most people wouldn't notice. And during all those visits from the HOA board members, I'd been observing some very interesting things about their perfect little subdivision. I started with a casual drive through Pleasant Valley Estates, just to get a better look at their community standards. What I found was fascinating. Despite all their rules about maintaining appearances, they were violating several actual city ordinances. For starters, they had installed decorative lighting along their main entrance that was way too bright and positioned wrong, creating a safety hazard for drivers. The city has specific regulations about lighting near roadways, and their setup was definitely not in compliance. Then there was their community mailbox cluster. It was installed on what they thought was HOA property, but according to the survey records I checked, it was actually 3 feet onto the county right-of-way. That's a big no-no that could result in fines and forced removal. But the real gold mine was their stormwater management. The subdivision had several retention ponds that were supposed to be maintained according to environmental regulations. A closer look revealed they'd been dumping grass clippings and landscaping debris into the ponds, which is illegal contamination of stormwater systems. I spent the next few weeks documenting everything properly: photos, measurements, cross-references with municipal codes. I was thorough because I knew this needed to be bulletproof. Then I filed formal complaints with every relevant city and county department. The HOA president had demanded I follow rules and regulations after all. She'd insisted that community standards must be maintained and violations couldn't be tolerated. She'd even called the police to enforce compliance. So I was just helping her achieve those same high standards she'd been so passionate about. The first sign that my plan was working came when I saw a city inspector's truck parked at the subdivision entrance. Then came the environmental enforcement officer checking out the retention ponds. Within 2 weeks, Pleasant Valley Estates had received violation notices from 4 different municipal departments. The lighting had to be completely redone at a cost of several $1,000s. The mailbox cluster had to be relocated, which meant tearing up landscaping and repaving part of the entrance area. But the stormwater violations were the real killer. They faced daily fines until they hired an environmental remediation company to clean out the ponds and restore them to compliance. The HOA president showed up at my property one more time, about a month after the violation started hitting. She was a lot less aggressive this time, more desperate than demanding. She wanted to know if I had filed complaints against the subdivision. I was completely honest with her. I explained that as a concerned citizen and neighbor, I felt obligated to report code violations when I became aware of them. After all, she taught me how important it was to maintain community standards and ensure everyone followed the rules. I was just applying that same principle to actual laws instead of made-up HOA regulations. She tried to negotiate some kind of deal where I'd help them resolve the violations in exchange for them leaving me alone. I politely declined. I pointed out that I'd offered to be left alone from the very beginning, but she'd chosen to escalate the situation by making demands and calling the police. Now that government agencies were involved, it was out of my hands. The best part came a few months later when I heard through the grapevine that the HOA had been forced to levy a special assessment on all the homeowners to cover the violation fines and remediation costs. Each household got hit with a bill for over $2,000, all because their board president couldn't mind her own business. The subdivision is much quieter now. The HOA board members drive past my property without stopping, and I haven't had a single complaint about my workshop, garden, or fence. I still see the president occasionally when she drives by, but she keeps her eyes straight ahead and her clipboard to herself. I learned a valuable lesson from this whole experience. Sometimes the best way to deal with people who insist on throwing their weight around is to let them discover just how much weight you can actually throw. She wanted rules and regulations enforced, compliance demanded, and authorities involved. She got all of that, just not the way she expected. My cabin project is coming along nicely, by the way. I'm thinking about adding a nice deck that faces toward the subdivision. Nothing says good neighbor like a perfect view of someone else learning not to mess with cops on their own property. The next one is a malicious compliance story. I used to work on the loading dock of a fruit packing plant. The plant would get orders of a certain amount of heavy boxes of kinds and sizes of fruit, usually apples, and we'd use forklifts to bring our palletfuls of boxes from cold storage, reload those boxes by hand onto different pallets to fit the order, and then load the order into semi-trucks to be shipped. The apples were clean-ish, but the boxes and pallets were not, so it was dusty, physical labor for sometimes more than 8 hours a day, but we all pulled our weight. One coworker was not always that bright, but had somehow convinced himself he was smarter than the rest of us. Think of constant assistant to the regional manager vibes, but without the funny. We were in the middle of loading an order, and it happened to fall to him to do most of the hand stacking, as it sometimes does, while the rest of us were finishing other necessary jobs. The previous order I had done most of the hand stacking, which was fine, while he had been somehow nowhere to be found till the very end. It's okay, stuff happens, but it was a pattern with him and the supervisor never seemed to hound him about it, so now he's doing the heavy lifting, and I have the option to immediately join him and help, or let my own muscles rest for a minute by doing a different, necessary job of tying off the tops of fully loaded pallets before jumping in. I chose the latter, still physical, but not as. By the time I was done, he was still stacking. I knew there was only room for 2 to stack at a time, and I looked to the other guys to see if they might help instead, but they were still finishing up their own jobs. Since I was earliest done, I figured I should just help him and get it over with. I walk over, grab a box, break the glue that holds it to the other boxes so the entire stack doesn't fall apart, and get ready to lift. That's when he said it. "You might as well let me finish it myself." For whatever reason, this had been a thing my supervisor had been saying the last few days when coworkers had been slow, kind of teasing them, but also trying to light a fire too. So here's him, borrowing my supervisor's line, directing it at me. I could see he was angry and felt justified. I froze, box in hand, glue half broken, and looked up at him. "Okay." I let the box fall and walked across the dock to where I now see the rest of my coworkers and my supervisor watching us. Their work was done and they were all standing there waiting for Shane to finally be done with his. I just realized they'd seen and heard everything, and I expected my soup to chew me out because he'd always been adamant about not letting stupid arguments get in the way of work. He didn't say a word. None of them did. I maintained my calm pace until I joined them. Then I turned and watched, we'll call him Shane because it's actually his name, finish his job. It was just a couple more minutes, but it was glorious. It was like we were all just taking a second before our next job, but no one else joined him. We just watched, and I could almost see his brain actively try to figure out what had just happened, like gears spinning but not engaging. I've worked a lot of crappy jobs with not always the best of people, but this is a moment that always makes me smile. The next one is an entitled people story. This is more of a vent post, but I just needed to get it off my chest. Recently, I've noticed that my father is a very entitled person. For the past few months, I've been struggling to accept this because he's my dad. He's my hero, the person I've always looked up to. I've done everything physically possible in my 21 years on this earth for him to be proud of me. When my parents divorced when I was 8, I followed him because he said my mom was being unreasonable and my dad always knows what's right. He brought in a second wife, my stepmom, justified it with religion, and I believed him. I don't have a relationship with my mom now because he cut her out and she stopped reaching out. Participated in sports like running because he once mentioned if he had a son, he would like him to run. At that time, I was the only child. I have younger siblings now, but I use 11 plus years to senior them, and I joined my school's relay race team. I have never won gold, but I've brought silver and bronze. For him. I studied hard and got promoted to classes quicker because my cousins were doing that, so I had to do that. For him. He was never really home, and every time he was, he wouldn't have time for me. Blamed it on work. He was always traveling. I believed him. I have always believed him. Even when he got upset with me and would start listing everything he's ever done for me to make me know I owed, I always thought it was because he wanted me to do better. During my uni days, I had to beg money from other family members because he wouldn't answer me for money on time. I finished uni earlier this year, around January. I've been home since then and my eyes have opened. At first, I tried to make excuses. Blamed it on old age, on the stroke he had 3 years ago on anything, because I couldn't bring myself to believe that this was the kind of person he truly was. Doesn't give me money for basic sanitary needs. Won't let me get a job because people will talk. He's a big man and people will talk if they see his daughter working for peanuts. I have never gone against my father. I always listen. It wasn't until we got into an argument a few days ago, because I told him how he wanted me to do something was wrong, when he nearly slapped me. Yelled at me that as his daughter I was meant to listen to his words and obey him without compliant, that if I tried that nonsense again he would kick me out, that I was 21 and if I didn't mind myself he would marry me off and get his investments. Investment. That's all the man I've called my hero saw me as. It's as if the word was a key because it opened my eyes to a lot. Why he's always alone. Why he and my stepmom fight a lot. Why he has no close circle of friends. Why his own siblings avoid him. Everything he's done all my life. Every comment, every yell, every time he's made me feel small. It's all clear now. My father is a small, bitter, and selfish man. He feels entitled to me and my life as his property. And that's evil. He's so much more than that, but I can't bring myself to say more. I just wanted to get this off my chest because there's nothing I can do at home. Thank you for reading. The next one is an entitled parent story. For context, I am 19F. I have been with my boyfriend, 19M, for a little over 1 year. We have met on an online dating app, both being from small towns. He has not brought one red flag to this relationship. Yes, he does the Zaza and is dealing with his own home situation. I don't see the problem in that. My mother, 44F, does not like my boyfriend because he does the Zaza. I've met him online and is calling him lazy. Ever since then, my mother has been restricting where I travel to, with tracking apps on my phone, cameras around the house. She really does not want me to see him that bad, so I have been discreet in meeting him during times in the day. To get us to break up, she's been creating lies and manipulating me, stalking all of his social profiles to come up with lies, claiming he's not his age. He's shown me his ID and baby book, claiming he's cheating on me. He's been cheated on and does not like cheaters, and claiming that she knows someone who grew up with them and they think the family is bad. They did not grow up there. They in fact moved there when they were older. I love my mom, but I thought this was too much. Everything came to a head on Easter night when I had gotten into a very bad fight with my mom, and she said she was cutting off communication with me. I was very hurt and stormed off into my room crying to my boyfriend over the phone about how I didn't want to lose my mom's love. He was trying to cheer me up by having us play video games together, and all of a sudden my mom came into my room and ripped the phone out of my hand. My boyfriend thought I was getting hurt and started yelling for them to stop. When my mom realized I was on the phone with him, she called my dad down, and a screaming match started. It ended with me screaming at him to hang up, and he did. My mom threatened to smash my phone and take my keys away. I pay for insurance and phone service. My boyfriend's mom gave me an extra phone to use. I honestly do not know what to do. I am in college and can barely afford to leave. My mom is trying to get guardianship over me because I have Turner syndrome, and I apparently can't make decisions on my own. I've turned to Reddit for help on what to do. I feel so lost. Edit. I forgot to mention that one day I went to a hotel with my boyfriend and my mom tracked me down and turned her off her location to go there to see if I was with my boyfriend. She called in late to work to do this and wants me to do therapy. Edit 2. It's been well over a year, almost 2. I am now 20, and here's what has happened since. The good. I am now moved out with my now fiancé. He is amazing through all we have been through, and we are starting the process of planning our wedding. I am out of college. I got away from that toxic household, and I don't have to sneak around to see him anymore. The bad. The night I moved out was a horrible night. This was almost a month after Easter. I was planning to move out soon after the argument on Easter, so I was in communication with my fiancé's guy friend who is gay. I needed an out and he needed a roommate. This worked for us and we were excited. On the week I was supposed to move out, I was slowly packing and moving things into my car little by little so my family didn't get suspicious. I was supposed to move out on that Friday, but things got bad fast. On Fridays, I played Dungeons & Dragons with a group of family friends, but since I was moving out, I had to ask to play earlier in the week. We all decided we could play on Tuesday, so that was set for us to do. I was headed up there after work when I get a call from my youngest brother. When I pick up, he asked me where I was going. I responded that I was going to my D&D group, which my mom, lurking in the background, snarls, "You only play on Fridays, you're going to see your boyfriend, you liar." I was taken aback by the fact they were stalking my location again, so I angrily replied, "Why are you stalking my location?" and hung the phone up. I continued driving with more motivation to move out in the back of my mind as I vent to my fiancé and his friend about the situation. As I was picking up some food before I got to my destination, my mom calls me and I felt a sense of dread in my heart as I answered. My mom starts screaming at me about how I am disrespectful to her, and we get into an emotional argument. She ends the conversation by threatening to take the brakes out of my car and see how I can drive without them, and furiously hangs up. I never recorded the conversation. With these words pounding in my head, I frantically call my fiancé back, sobbing and explaining the situation. His friend overhears it and offers me to move in that night. I accepted and went through that night as usual, but when I got home was when I felt my stomach churning. I knew I had to tell my parents I was leaving that night, and so I did. There was a lot of arguing and commotion, but I nonetheless left. My mom still to this day has been trying to get me to come home and is saying that she has never said that threat. And also, my now ex-roommate did not turn out to be a good person in the end, so LMK if you want to hear about him. It's not that good, but it's still interesting. Anyway, thank you for watching.